As we gather today, let us remember that we are on the land of our Anishinaabe neighbors who have lived on these lands for thousands of years. We honor the native peoples who belong to the land and to recognize that the use of the lands by others has come as a result of the displacement of the land's original holders. Good morning. I'd like to welcome you to our annual diocesan gathering for 2020. Our time together will be a bit different as COVID-19, as you know, has changed our way of being together. And it kind of reminds me of the time I took a bicycle trip when I was in my early 30s. We traveled from Texas to Oklahoma to Arkansas, back to Oklahoma, and on to Kansas. And it was full of surprises, and I had to adapt to new situations daily. I even got lost on my journey and walked into someone's house. I will always remember the fellow looking at me with his eyes wide open as I pulled the screen door open. And that's a whole different story. But my bicycle journey was full of surprises, and I did make it to the end. And I met some great folk on that journey who have become my community. Our journey these past few months or past 6 months as people of faith and hope and grace and love certainly has been full of surprises and adaptations. So here we are online gathering in community to connect with each other as best as we can here in this time and place. And I'm excited as we gather this morning to pray and worship, to hear what has been going on in our diocese, and to hear from Jake Owensby, Bishop of Western Louisiana, this afternoon, as we talk more about living a resurrected shared life. We have lots to talk about, lots to hear about, so hold on to your seats.
We're going to share a song by Charles Murphy. Those of you who join us weekly for our Sacred Space service online will recognize Charles and his music. He's been hanging tight with us these past months, creating some really beautiful offerings of music of some of our favorite hymns in really kind of unique ways with his banjo and his drums. And so his partner Allison put together this video that kind of shows the behind the scenes of all that goes into these songs, which just sound to us like a great song. And little do we know, he's actually the only musician playing the different things, or when you hear harmonies, it's usually his own voice that he's producing over himself. And so he works really, really hard for us every week producing new content. And so we want to just show you a little, this behind the scenes video. That hang tight with us while we work on the technology of all of this. I think I got it though. Okay. That big.
Earth and all stars, loud rushing planets, sing to the Lord a new song. Hail, wind, and rain, loud blowing snowstorms, sing to the Lord a new song. God has done marvelous things. We too sing praises with a new song. Trumpet and pipes, loud clashing cymbals, sing to the Lord a new song. Harp, flute, and lyre, loud humming cello, sing to the Lord a new song. God has done marvelous things. We too sing praises with a new song. stone and beams, loud building workers sing to the Lord a new song. God has done marvelous things. We too sing praises with a new song. Knowledge and truth, loud sounding wisdom, sing to the Lord a new song. Daughter and son, loud praying members, sing to the Lord a new song. God has done marvelous things. We too sing praises with a new song. God has done marvelous things. We too sing praises with a new song. We too sing praises with a new song.
Good boy.
Let us pray. O Christ, you are within each of us. It's not just the interior of our walls. It is in our own inner being that you have renewed. We are your temple, not made with hands. We are your body. If every wall should crumble and every church decay, we are your habitation. Nearer are you than breathing, closer than hands and feet. Ours are the eyes with which you in the mystery look out with compassion on the world. Yet we bless you for our places, for the directing of us, your redeeming of us, and your indwelling. Take us outside, O Christ, outside holiness, out to where soldiers curse and nations clash at the crossroads of the world. So shall our buildings continue to be justified. We ask it for your own name's sake. Amen.
Amen. In the South, when you have breakfast, you get your eggs and bacon and a side order of grits, and it comes with a meal. It's just there, whether you like it or not. And I speak from experience. Many of you know I am a transplant. I came from Oklahoma and arrived here in the Upper Peninsula some 30 years ago. And one of my first visits was with Carol Clark. Carol was a person of deep spirituality and a mentor to many of us. She was an advocate of baptismal ministry and made a huge impact on the life of this diocese because of her strength, her dignity, her courage, and her love. Her inner being is woven into the fabric of this diocese with so many others who have gone before her. And I remember sitting down with her for breakfast when I got to the UP, and I ordered the typical breakfast. And what does Carol order? She orders grits. And I can see her smacking her lips saying, so good. And you know, I thought to myself when she ordered it, I can never get away from grits at a meal. And then she says, now listen to this. She says, grits. It's kind of like grace, kind of like love. That's what you're going to find here. It's our breath and it's our heart. You can't get away from it. You know, I had something else written up to share with you this morning, and frankly, I just put it aside. I had to put it aside after hearing a meditation this past Thursday by Brother Thomas Stephenson, another person whose spirituality has touched my soul and whose presence is being woven into the fabric of this diocese. So I'd like to share his words, his inner being with you this morning. It's entitled The Silent Chapel. I found myself the other day asking if there was a word that held the feeling of whatever is beyond overwhelmed. These past several months, I have felt that overwhelmed, the word is just a bit too small for what I have been feeling. There is so much happening, so much changing, so much tension and anxiety, so much hopefulness and doubt, so much panic and so much faith. I feel like the volume has been set on full blast for so long, and I struggle to find any silence. And I find myself wanting to engage, to do the right thing, whatever that is or happens to be. I hear about the state of injustice in one area and want to figure out a way to help. I hear about injustice in another place and want to see how I can maneuver things to make an impact there too, but I can't. This week, in preparing for a class on discernment, I read Psalm 85, and I want to read it for you now using Nan Merrill's version, and it goes like this. Listen, O people, in the silent chapel of your heart, and the beloved will speak of peace to you, to the hidden saints, to all who turn their hearts to love. Surely new life is at hand for those who reverence love. Oh, that harmony might dwell among the nations. Steadfast love and faithfulness will meet. Righteousness and peace will embrace one another. Wisdom will spring up from the ground, and truth will look down from the sky. Yes, the eternal giver will grant what is good, and the lands will yield abundantly. Mercy and compassion are love's way, and will guide our footsteps upon the path of peace. I heard this and a light bulb came on. I thought, this is a beautiful description of discernment. Discernment is the process of choosing between two good options. It is the process of listening to what is stirring within us and responding to the call of God. It is learning to sift through all the noise and the emotion and the fear and enter into that silent chapel in my heart where the beloved will speak peace to me. Discernment is that incredible moment when wisdom springs up from within me and is informed by who I am and what I know of me, informed by my past and present, by what I must deeply desire. It is all that wisdom that bubbles up and meets that truth that pours down from the sky. That truth is God's affirming words that encourage me to move forward, to embrace all that I have been created to be. It is in that miraculous joining of heaven and earth, of Christ in me, that I gain the insight I need to move forward. And as I prepared for class, writing about discernment and reading the psalm over again, a notification on my cell phone caught my attention, announcing another piece of horrible and disheartening news. And then I saw them side by side, news notification and the psalm. One speaking of hope and connection, and one speaking of division and fear. And in that moment, I learned a few things. The first thing I realized and need to accept is that I can't do everything. I can't engage with every horrible thing that I hear about around the world. I can't engage with everything because I have limitations. And what I can do is to engage in some things And by engaging in some things rather than everything, I can focus my energy and attention and be fully present. I can always try to be kind and respectful. I may not be able to actively engage in demonstrations, but I can connect with those who have lost someone during the pandemic. Both are valid, and both are important. And by accepting my limits, I'm free to be more present to that which I can do. The second thing I realized is that I had given into the noise. In my panic and being more than overwhelmed, I had stopped even trying to listen to the voice of the God who loves me and you, Emmanuel, the God who promised to be with us. I let the loudest voice gain my attention and let silence slip into the background. God's voice is soft and gentle because it doesn't need to compete with the noise. The God who loves me and you, the one who spoke the world into being, has nothing to prove. God is present. I just need to tune into that gentle, soft voice, to enter the silent chapel inside myself and listen to what God has to say. There is an importance to being informed and knowing what is going on in the world around us, but not at the cost of losing the connection to the God who loves us. The third thing is that I have gifts waiting for just a time as this to come into fruition. And I don't know what those gifts are or how they will be used, but the eternal giver who grants what is good does. With God's help, that truth from the sky combined with the gifts and desires springing up in me, I will yield abundantly and in ways that will bring life to those around me. Those around me may simply be the small circle of my friends or family, or it may be my church community, or it may be much larger. But the impact isn't the point. The point is my faithfulness to the gifts I have been given, to the deepening relationship to the God who loves us, and to the path set before me. The ways that I help are valid, and whether the fruition of my gifts helps one person or a whole nation, the process is worth it. The world is still noisy today. I still feel myself panicking a bit, but I'm remembering my way back to that silent chapel in my heart. I am trying to focus less on the noise and notifications of disheartening news, and that helps. Instead, I'm trying to focus on what the wisdom that is welling up in me, those gifts ready to ripen, and keeping my ears and eyes open for that incredible truth coming down from the sky that will help me find my footing in this wobbly world. And I may not change the world, but I will be able to do my part in the ways that use the gifts I have been given, in ways that I can be fully present, and most likely in ways I could never truly imagine. Wow. Words, that have touched my soul from Thomas. Words that we need to hear and weave into the fabric of our being as individuals and as a community of faith. Words of dignity and strength, courage, grace, and love. Even in these frenetic times, we have managed to accomplish a lot here in the Diocese of Northern Michigan. We've been able to look within ourselves to hear the God who loves you, the God who loves me, the God who loves us, Emmanuel, the God who promised to be with us. We as a diocese are trying to listen to where God is leading us. It's not easy listening when there is so much noise all around us. Yet we have gone into the silent chapel and discerned how the gospel is being brought to life within individuals, church communities, and the diocese. The discernment has been a birthing process, and it has given new life and substance and commitment to baptismal ministry and a call to action by living out our baptismal covenant. You are going to hear briefly this morning some of the ways we are bringing the gospel to life in this time and place here in the Diocese of Northern Michigan. Thank you.
Thanks, Rayford. So speaking of Brother Thomas, many of you will remember around last year at this time, I gave a report to convention about the project, the ministry initiative that Brother Thomas and I did last summer, where we visited almost every congregation, almost every faith community in our diocese, and we called it Taking the Pulse. And so last year, I gave you a pretty thorough report of what we found and what we heard. And I don't need to repeat that this year, but I want to remind us of what some of the summary was and what came out of that deep listening that we did with all of you, with all of our local communities. Because I think we have something to celebrate this year in that we've moved closer to this hope and to this vision. So what our goals and desired outcome was, to remind us, was to create a diocesan structure that helps people feel more connected and less isolated, to create community where there is a place for everyone and that people feel that they're being met where they are, to spend more time in prayer, to be less task-oriented and more thoughtful, and to honor rest. We said we needed more simplicity, more connection with one another, a space for creativity to emerge. We heard loud and clear that folks did not want any outside or inside experts. That's not really something we in the UP appreciate a lot of. Instead, we wanted to acknowledge and honor the wisdom of everyone, and that we needed folks who could help us do that. And we wanted a lower ratio of missioners to congregations. And ideally, we said that structure would be maybe one missioner to 3 or 4 congregations at the most. And it was something we kind of hemmed and hawed over and said, can we make that happen? Do we have the money? Do we have the ability? Could we recruit the people? This is our pie in the sky dream. And I'm really happy to report back that we did. We were able to do it. That when we crunched the numbers, when we put together all of our resources and centralized our intake rather than with the districts where everything was compartmentalized, when we looked at the numbers, we actually had enough. It's truly this loaves and fishes, manna falling from the sky type situation where we said, it looks like we can do it. And so rather than post for 2 positions for regional missioners, we were able to hire 3 new missioners. And all three have now moved to the UP to be with us. And we're going to give them each an opportunity to introduce themselves. But it's something I think to definitely celebrate. There were folks in other places saying, we can't hire people during COVID with this. It's crazy. We got to put everything on hold. And your diocesan leadership and council and others said, no, we don't want to put this on hold. This is something that we need to live into who we are as a diocese. And so we move forward and we put together profiles, and many of you participated in interviews and in hospitality and have continued to offer great hospitality for our new folks. So we're really excited about that. I just want to remind us of what the role of the missioner is. And again, this came from you all. This came from the local visits when we asked, what do you think a missioner should be and should do? And then we had this retreat in person with the stakeholders and the leadership of the diocese. And we again reviewed this and honed it down. And the things that we said a missioner should be and do are to offer a fresh perspective, kind of that outside perspective from outside the local community, but that still honors the local community. Someone who cares for community, who regularly affirms the community and regularly checks in, asks questions, and shows support. And someone who can offer basic formation, both in Episcopal identity, liturgy, and more challenging areas of interest for the local community. Someone to offer pastoral care and connection. And someone to push us towards life, to celebrate the great things, the sparks of life that do exist in every single one of our places. And the last, which I love, was someone for enjoyment and play, to share those moments of joy with us. So I just pulled this up this morning, and as I read it, I am so happy because I think this is exactly who these people are and what they've been called to do with us. So with further ado, I would like to introduce first Brad Pickens. I gotta find his box. Okay, wait, unpin, right? Okay. Hi, Oli. I see Oli too. Oh, I see you, Brad. Okay, pin you. There, okay.
All right, am I supposed to go? Well, good morning, good morning. As I was thinking about what I wanted to share with you this morning, I kept returning to the 6th chapter of John's Gospel, the day after Jesus feeds the multitude, when the crowd follows him to the other side of the sea, seeking more food and perhaps some insight into the person who offered it. This crowd approaches Jesus with a story. They bring to him a story of food that they believe had been provided to their ancestors by Moses. And Jesus responds to this odd community of disciples, Galilean peasants, and Jewish leaders by expanding their story. It wasn't Moses, after all, who provided food, but God. And the story that they bring doesn't end as an event that occurred in the distant past, but is brought into the present reality of the listeners through the bodily presence of Jesus. Heavenly bread for a world that is always encountering God anew. Jesus doesn't limit the benefits of his presence to the gathered crowd, however. The living bread that came down from heaven is not offered for this group alone, but is given for the life of the world. Jesus's presence, that is the offering of his body as living bread, accomplishes something. It makes abundant life present for the whole world, not just for a given time and place. And this brief passage in John's Gospel upends the crowd's complacent ways of thinking about their own stories, their communities, and their religious history. Instead, they're invited into a new reality where they can share in Christ's mission for the life of the world. And I was thinking about this passage because it ties into another story that's every bit as relevant for this diocese and for me. When my family and I came up this summer to interview for this position, after the first day of conversation, my wife and my young daughters went to bed, and I sat up late into the night reading some of the materials that I'd been given that spoke about the history and spirit of the diocese. And chief among the things that caught my eye was an essay written by our bishops, Tom Ray and Jim Kelsey, more than 15 years ago on how the Diocese of Northern Michigan had begun its journey of shared ministry and how that journey had taken numerous twists and turns over the years. The spark of a letter from St. Stephen's Church in Detour set in motion spirit fire in this place, a request for a local person to be ordained so that, for the sake of God, living bread come down from heaven would again be a regular presence in that community. And as I read this story, I saw that our bishops and friends were not proposing a new model of church or a program to be followed. Instead, what they described was a diocesan-wide goal of spiritual formation that was so profound that those people traditionally consigned to the role of a passive laity might rise up and take on the mantle of together carrying out the ministry of the church, which Jesus conferred upon each of us at our baptism. That was accomplished through formation that deepened faith and shaped us spiritually. And the belief that these bishops expressed, and that I too hold, was that spiritual shaping accomplishes something. It aligns us with mission that is focused on the ongoing action of God in the world, and it equips us to bring that mission to our communities. And as I read this brief article, I recognized a like-minded community of God whose desire to share the good things of the earth with one another and with the world was grounded in the abundance that grows out of a full and healthy community, made up of individuals with diverse views and gifts. I recognized the core values of discipleship, a commitment to prayer and liberation that I've always placed front and center in my own ministry. I saw that being explored and enacted throughout this diocese. And I saw a community that was willing to take the risk of encountering God in the wholeness of life, not just on Sunday morning, but in the easy places and the difficult ones alike, and in doing so fully recognizing the world as a sacrament of God's presence and action through God's people. As my wife Kara and I drove back to Southern Indiana with our 6-year-old daughter Hazel and our 3-year-old daughter Iris, neither of us once asked whether or not I would take the job. Instead, we talked about how we would leave our family and our farm, the house that we lived in that was built by my grandparents during the Depression, the friends that we loved, the ministry that we'd established, and the community that we had built. And the reason that we left was because we knew that we were being called here so that we could expand your story and so that you could expand ours. The reason that we left was because we knew that the story told by Tom and Jim did not end in the past, but continues with all of us as the key actors in a story that continues to unfold. And the reason that we left was because we believe that what is happening here among us is and can be a gift, a sacrament of God offered for the life of the world. Over the past couple of months, as we've settled into the rhythms of life here, those realizations have been confirmed and strengthened, and I am deeply humbled to be able to share in the life of the people of this diocese and to participate in the ministry and the good work that you have begun. I want to thank everybody that I've met. Especially the people in my primary partner congregations of Crystal Falls, Menominee, and Iron Mountain. I want to thank those of you that I only know online or through email. I want to thank you for the very, very generous welcome and kindness that you've offered to us. I want to tell those of you that I have yet to know that I'm looking forward to meeting you. And I want to tell everyone that I can't wait to see what God does next. I'm delighted to be here, and I just want to thank you so very, very much.
Thank you, Brad. We're going to now introduce to you Marna Franson, who will have her piece as well. You can unmute yourself, Marna.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted now. All right. Well, hi, everybody. I am Marna Franson, and I come to you from Arkansas, but originally I come to you from Connecticut. So this northern girl has seen snow before. Don't be worried that I've never seen snow. And I want to tell you a little bit about me, and I want to tell you about where I've come from, and I want to tell you about why I'm excited to be here. I want to tell you first about my family, because those were the instructions. Tell everybody a little bit about your family, about you, about how you got here. My family is in 3 parts. My extended family, my mom, my dad, my brothers and sisters, all of that are all in Connecticut. And I was always the outlier. And so I think coming to the UP proves that I am pretty consistent throughout my life to just move to a new place at this point. But my Connecticut roots are strong and deep, and I think will help me make the adjustment back to the north, because I've lived in the South for 25 years. I've lived in Little Rock, Arkansas, and that's another family that I have. The folks that when I got there, I knew no one except the person that I went with, which was my ex-husband. And then 25 years later, there is this community that is really my second family. And so that's my second family. My intimate family are my 3 sons. I have 3 strapping boys who are very different from each other. And one of them lives with his wife in Little Rock, Arkansas, and has graduated from college and is working on a political campaign. And I'm very proud of him. And I can't believe that I don't live in Little Rock anymore. The other one, my second son, has gone off to college this year. And oh my goodness, he is doing it in the midst of COVID-19. And I'm so proud of what they're doing to keep themselves safe and yet to do college. And then the third son has made this trip with me. And there's the dog. The dog has not barked for a month. The dog has not barked. So now the dog is barking. Okay, there we go. And Layla came with us. Oh, come on, dog. Okay, it's snowing outside of here, and the dog must have gotten excited about the snow. So Sam is with me, and hopefully he'll be going to NMU to study welding, and I am so grateful for his company. So the other thing I want to talk to you a little bit about is my background in the church, and to tell you what it's. Do you mind if I put the dog up for a minute? Okay, thank you. I'm going to mute myself.
We totally understand, Marna.
I was looking for
Usually
something
my-
witty to say, but I don't have one.
It's usually my kids going, Mom, 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 I'm hungry, Mom.
Dog is now paying
We love
rapt
children of all
attention.
varieties.
Okay, I think it's so funny. What I think is really funny is that Brad had this like lovely thing all organized, and I've got the dog barking, which shows that we are really a diverse team here that has come to the UP. So let me tell you that I am old enough to have done a lot of things in the church. I went to Honduras as a volunteer for mission, which is kind of like the Peace Corps. I've been with families and children. I've been a social worker. I've done all these things, and I mostly have not been ordained. I got ordained 4 years ago, out of the blue, even though I have 2 seminary experiences and a master's in Spanish literature. I did not expect ever to be in the place of being ordained as a priest. And it was such a surprise to me that because I never felt less than as a lay person. I was fortunate enough to grow up with some parents who said to me, the priest is not the church. Priests are going to come and they're going to go. The people of God in a place for the church. And so I've always lived into that, and I've always believed that, and I've been fortunate enough to have that modeled for me and to have opportunities to live into that. And so the thing that drew me here was that that's how you guys operate. I mean, you are the church, and I love that, and it feels like home to come here. And I want to tell you what I bring here. I bring a lot of enthusiasm. I have been told by my children that I'm exhausting to live with. And so please don't feel inhibited in any way to tell me to calm down, because I am that kind of person with a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm. I really do see possibilities everywhere. I really do see the connections that can happen between people's giftedness. 10 years ago, I heard a sermon by one of my mentors, and he had just come back from sabbatical where he had had 6 months to think about things, and I couldn't wait to hear the sermon. And what he said was this: if you want to know what God is doing in the world, you are what God is doing in the world. You are what God is doing in the world. And when you talk about churches, everybody that walks through the door, that's what God is doing in the world. And as I have meditated on that and lived that out, what I realize is that that's true inside and outside the church. It almost feels to me as though the walls of the church have dissolved and the Holy Spirit has gone out into the streets, because God's kingdom is going to come. And love is love, whether it's couched in theological terms or couched in secular terms. Love is love. And so the question is, how do we nurture the giftedness in every person we meet? And how do we help that person live into who God is calling them to be? You are what God is doing in the world. And so my obsessions are with finding out people's stories, hearing stories. I can't wait to collect stories. I also like to throw a lot of spaghetti against the wall. We never know what's going to stick. So my plan is to throw as much spaghetti against the wall as we possibly can and try a whole bunch of new things. It's okay to fail. We don't know. We don't really know. I love what Rayford shared with us today about listening to that quiet space, because as we listen, oh my gosh, who knows what's going to happen. And the other thing is that I am not afraid to form relationship, and that's my job. I love that in the job description it said that I wasn't supposed to come and help save you guys. Thank you, God. Like I'm here to companion and to listen. And I think an outside perspective sometimes sees the giftedness in people that you don't see. Like already with the people that I've met, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what a treasure trove. But we get so used to each other, we don't see it. So my job is to companion with you, and I'm really looking forward to doing that. And like Brad said, thank you for the abundant welcome. And please feel free to write me an email and give me any tips about snow and ice, the boots to wear, the mittens to buy, like the practicalities of life do me in. So feel free to give me any advice that you would like.
Thank you, Marna. Lastly, I would like to introduce you to David Carlisle, who I'll ask David to unmute yourself. And welcome, you have the microphone.
Great, thank you. Hi everyone, I'm David. I am here actually in Iron River, is where I'm Zooming to you from. I'm staying with my parents until I can find a place in Marquette, and then I'll be moving up there. And I wanted to, a lot of people in the diocese who have met me already know that I have a family, but they don't necessarily, it says that the host is disabled, share screen. I was hoping to share a picture of my family, since a lot of you haven't actually met them yet. I feel a little bit, all right, cool. So they're probably not going to be happy that I shared this particular photo, but I like it. So my wife, Aram, is in the middle, and then my two sons, Desmond is the older one on the left, and Wallace is the younger one on the right. And they're still living where I came from, which is most immediately where I came from, which is Tucson, Arizona. My wife is a professor at the University of Arizona. She and I met in graduate school for classics, and for a brief period of time we were both trying to be academics. She's still doing that and is now on the 10-year clock for that, but I felt this call to ordained ministry that called me away from that, called me into the church, and then ultimately brought me to be ordained in the Diocese of Arizona and to serve a church there. So that's one side of my story, one side of my family, and how I came into the ministry in the Episcopal Church. And then the other side of the story is, I mentioned that I'm here in Iron River. That's because my mother, her whole family was originally from here in the UP, actually from Crystal Falls. And she moved back here to be with her father while he was ailing and passed away a few years ago. And she decided to stay up here in the UP. So the other side of my family is connected to the UP in a very kind of feels like a very rooted way. I lived here when I was in college. This was the place I came back to between college semesters. And I would come every summer as well to help my grandfather build a cabin up on Lake Superior that he was working on for several years, up on the Keweenaw. And so that felt to me like a different part of my life from the ordination part of my life and the vocation. And then when I saw that those two pieces that always felt sort of disintegrated for me, that they could come together, then even though I wasn't at the time looking for a call somewhere else, I started the process, and everything, the welcome that I felt from Lydia and Rayford and from everyone in the diocese was really, was so palpable that I felt like the Holy Spirit is at work here, right? And so the sort of passion for ministry piece, the reason why I think it's about more than just being an honorary Euper and a priest and wanting to be back here in the UP. The other thing that I noticed about this beautiful place and about the church here connects to a realization that I had in the first 2 years of doing ministry when I was really struggling. And what I was struggling with was trying to figure out what exactly my job was as the priest in charge of a church. And it felt to me like there was no real clarity to me about what my role was, because there wasn't really clarity about what the church was supposed to be doing. Like people were coming to it and just sort of, they had sort of an understanding, certain assumptions about what the church is here for, but there wasn't intentionality or clarity about that. And so I started thinking about it more, and at the same time I was beginning the formation process to become a Benedictine canon, which is a little bit like a Benedictine monk, except obviously you can be married and have children, and you also don't have to live in a monastery. So with those two exceptions to the general rule, you still try to shape your life according to the rule of Saint Benedict. And so I'm in formation for that. And as I was wrestling with these two parts of my life, I suddenly read a piece of the rule of Saint Benedict, and it all fit together. And it's where Saint Benedict is talking about the monastery, and he says, what we're trying to do is to establish a school or a training ground for God's service. And he later on gets into, whether any of the monks should be ordained and how you shouldn't just assume that if they want to be ordained, they should be, and so on. And he's effectively saying this is what religious community is about. The ordination thing is just about, whether you have the people who can function a certain way around to, consecrate the Eucharist and everything. And really, this is what everyone in the community is supposed to be doing, is training for God's service. That's what we're called to do. So I had that sort of realization. That's what the church is supposed to be too, right? Is a training ground to serve God, to partner with God in God's mission for the world, to introduce another form of community, an alternative way of being in this world to the broken way that we see around us all the time. And the problem was that a lot of churches aren't really set up to work that way. And so as I had this realization, I also realized how challenging it would be to try to get the church I was serving to live into that mission. And then I was called here, and you all are already doing that. That's how this diocese is shaped. And it fit together so perfectly to realize, yeah, that's exactly what the Diocese of Northern Michigan is already doing. It's already treating its churches like they are training grounds for God's service. And it doesn't matter whether you're ordained or lay, that's what you're here for, so that you can carry that mission out into the world. So I'm so grateful to be here, and I'm so happy. And I think I'm the most recent arrival of the three. So I've met even fewer of you than the other two have, but I'm so looking forward to it. And I hope, I hope that we'll have lots of chances to meet in person too, once all of this pandemic has gone away.
Thanks so much, David. And now we're going to hear from the Great Lakes Peace Center.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for inviting us to your convention today. My name is Deb Netto.
And I'm Kathy Vannon Bogard, and we're with the Great Lakes Peace Center.
The Great Lakes Peace Center was started in response to seeing the ongoing hurt that was happening to my husband, a beautiful Ojibwa man. He was experiencing, and I was seeing lateral violence, racial discrimination, and the trauma that he experienced by being placed as a child in an Indian boarding school, followed by his firstborn son being removed from his parental custody. And I want to let you know that his son, we found him in March, and we're going to meet him on November 11th for the first time. So we're really excited. But in recognition of the pain that racial discrimination can create, we founded the Peace Center. And it's our hope that our services will help people stop the hurting and start the healing.
So in our partnership with the Diocese, we are members of the Justice and Peace Committee, as well as part of the Becoming Beloved Community team, which also includes team members Arlene Gordonier, Rick Stenitis, and Pamela Vincent Jenkins. We've also helped to write and implement 2 grants to help support the work of social justice and racial healing. So in 2018, the Diocese received a United Think Offering grant that focused on providing a clear understanding of the doctrine of discovery, listening and learning sessions with Native American communities throughout the UP, and developing a mobile exhibit that tells the truth about the true history of the Anishinaabe people, the harm done by the church, and a formal apology from the bishop. And then last year in 2019, the Diocese also received a Becoming Beloved community grant that focuses on developing Peace Camp curriculum and design, adding a knowledge keeper position, which is sometimes referred to as a Native resident elder, to the diocesan leadership team, as well as continuing to offer co-human harmony workshops.
So we're hopeful that the future is going to include peace clubs for young children, 4 to 12 years old, and they look like story hours with guided dialogues for the children and dialogues for the parents. Middle school and high school peace clubs, interfaith dialogue sessions, earth care efforts that support Indigenous-led initiatives, something called Peace and Popcorn, which is a web-based movie followed by discussions, and then Peace and Pondering, web-based book clubs with discussions. We'd love to see Justice Singers happening in the UP and how to support First Nations people workshops. We're designing new workshops.
So while we are a grassroots organization of 3 people with 2 other volunteers, this quote really fits our mission and vision for what we want the Peace Center to be, by Margaret Mead, which is, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has.
Every one of us can make a positive impact in our world. We just need to decide what actions we want to make and to do them. We wish you well on this important work of walking in the way of love. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you. Michigan Interfaith Power and Light is an organization the diocese has been involved with for some time. Rayford is now on the board, and we have a word from Leah Wisty of that organization.
Greetings, Northern Michigan Episcopalians. My name is Leah Wisty, and I am the Executive Director of Michigan Interfaith Power and Light. We are a nonprofit. We've been around since 2002, and our mission is to inspire and equip people of faith to exercise stewardship of and love for all creation. We offer practical ways to put faith into action by promoting energy efficiency, renewable energy, and other sustainable practices that lead to a cleaner, healthier, and more just world. People of faith have been a part of movements for justice for hundreds of years in this country. People of faith have been involved in anti-slavery, women's suffrage, the civil rights movement, and today we're called to care for our climate and creation. Michigan IPL has over 300 member congregations from over 20 different faiths and denominations all over the state, including all of the Episcopal churches in the Upper Peninsula. Yours is the only judicatory that has all of its churches signed up as members. And I like to think of our work in terms of a three-legged stool. The first leg of the stool is local practical actions. So that could be things you might do in your congregation to reduce your carbon footprint, right? Reducing your energy use, doing a green team, for example. The second leg of the stool is spiritual changes. So connecting with Scripture, connecting with your faith tradition to learn more and deepen your own felt sense of what does it mean to care for creation. And the third leg of the stool is social and structural change. So that can include voting, that can include, trying to dismantle systems of oppression. That's the three-legged stool. The last thing that I wanted to tell you about is our Faith Climate Justice voter campaign. So, of course, voting has already started in Michigan. It ends on November 3rd, which is just around the corner. And while we know that about 1.5 million ballots have been cast so far, we also know that about 4 in 5 eligible Michigan voters have not voted yet. So we are still working as hard as we can to make sure people have all of the information they need to vote and to vote their values and vote for climate action. So we've got a Faith Climate Justice voter campaign. This is nonpartisan. We're not endorsing any candidates or any parties. What we are endorsing is the sacredness of creation and the prayer that our lawmakers will take bold action on climate to stabilize our climate and to reduce pollution. I'm going to read, we have on our website, I'm going to tell you how you can sign our Faith Climate Justice voter pledge. I'm going to read the pledge, and I hope you'll join me in signing it. I pledge to vote with climate and creation in mind. I am pledging to be a climate justice voter, to put love into action for every creature and for every vulnerable community suffering the impacts of our changing climate, from sea level rise to extreme heat, to devastating droughts, to supercharged storms. My pledge to vote for climate justice is rooted in environmental justice. I am in solidarity with all who are disproportionately burdened with climate impacts, including Black, Brown, Indigenous, and low-income communities. I believe that our nation's elected leaders and our public policies should reflect our shared values. By pledging to be a consistent voter and vote with climate justice in mind, I am communicating the values of caring for God's creation and our children's future. So as faith leaders, clergy, and lay, I'm asking you to join me in signing this pledge. This is how you can do it. You can text Faith Voter to this number here, 72572. Text Faith Voter to 72572. You can also find out more about our campaign on our website. This is where you can sign the pledge. You can download our multi-issue Faith Values Voter Reflection Guide, and you can also get sermon resources. You can find that at our website, miipl.org/FCJV for Faith, Climate, Justice, Voter. Thanks so much.
Thank you to Leah. It's now my pleasure to tell you about several fundraisers that happened this year. Members of the diocese and beyond came to aid our hungry and at-risk siblings in the UP and in the wider church in response to the extra need caused by COVID-19. 3 fundraisers were held this year that surpassed our expectations. Over $100,000 was raised in partnership with our interfaith and ecumenical partners for Feeding America West Michigan. This matching grant was seeded by several foundations and matched by many, many, many individual gifts. Our thanks to Mary Sullivan for being an integral part of making this happen. The monies raised are funding a series of food trucks for distributions to pantries, food pantries, and directly to people across the UP. IndigiAid was an online fundraising event championed by our own Lydia Buckland, and along with others in the Episcopal Church, including the Indigenous Ministry staff. This telethon type event featured musicians and performers from across the country and including the UP, where all the aid was raised for Episcopal and Indigenous faith communities. In total, $35,387.69 was raised. Of that, 60% has gone to the Episcopal Church in Navajo land to support their efforts with COVID-19. And monies have also gone to the Yakama Nation in the Diocese of Spokane. And speaking of Navajo land, the COVID-19 relief efforts for the Episcopal Church in Navajo land it has been a grassroots effort. It started out of this diocese along with a friend of the diocese, Joe Hubbard from Virginia Theological Seminary. The people in this case raised $33,303.69 for our siblings in need in Navajo land. And now we're going to hear a word from Cornelia Eaton of the Episcopal Church in Navajo land.
Yat from Dene Bikea. Greetings from Navajo land. I'm Cornelia Eaton. I serve as Canon to the Ordinary for Ministry in the Episcopal Church in Navajo land. I would like to take this time to say thank you, Achehe, for journeying with us in prayer and in journeying with us in your generosity. Your support has really helped us, is helping us a lot in terms of purchasing food, water, and essential needs for our communities and for families and our congregations. And this is a gift. Your gift is a blessing way to us, especially to our elders during this time of need. We continue to offer up our gratitude each day and for you and for your help. And I just want to say to continue to pray with us. We continue to pray the Beauty Way prayer to the 4 sacred directions within the 4 sacred mountains. And it's a creation prayer, the Blessing Way prayer that offers us wholeness, wellness, and health for our families, our loved ones, and for the world in which we all share together. And it's for healing and health, and we pray for these things. And I just want to say thank you for your generosity. It is truly a Beauty Way prayer that we're all living into. God be with you. Hojong.
Thanks to everyone who gave for these particular fundraisers to aid our siblings, especially those in Navajo land who are hit especially hard during COVID, and for those at home here in the UP. Now we're going to hear from UP Wild Church, Lanny Lanto.
Hey, can everybody hear me? Thumbs up.
Maybe it's a little bit louder.
Okay, is that better? A little bit, okay. I just want to acknowledge that I'm freezing. I'm from here. I'm from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I'm from Marquette. My husband's from Negaunee. And it looks like we just moved here from another state, but we just moved in between Marquette and Big Bay. And so we're still working on an office space that we didn't think we were going to have to finish so soon, but are happy that we get the challenge to do that. So yes, I mentioned I am married. My husband is Dustin Katona. We have a little guy who's 4 years old. His name is Satori, and he is probably the most wonderful and challenging thing in my life as well, including this ministry. Anybody who has a dog, a toddler, kind of knows like what it's like right now. It's like Brother Thomas said, can be very overwhelming. It's kind of hard to keep track of my to-do list. I'm the kind of person who's always on top of it. And now it's very difficult to look at a to-do list and not be able to cross everything off. But I am so excited to be able to share with you a little bit about UP Wild. I think I spoke last year at the Diocesan Conference, so some of you might remember me. I just wanted to acknowledge that we are a church plant. We're a new Episcopal community. So we survive on grants to really do this initiative with a lot of support from you all in the diocese. Basically, my job as a mission developer is to go into the streets and to find those people that have fallen in the cracks of the church, who have been really hurt by the church, will not step foot inside of a church. And then my part of that job is to say, how do you build a community? How do you build a ministry geared towards these people? And what we found kind of coming out of it is that a lot of people within the Episcopal Diocese or the Lutheran Synod or even the Catholics and the Methodists are becoming a part of UP Wild, which is something I don't think we fully thought was going to happen. So that's very exciting. And we're seeing this ministry grow. I just wanted to tell you a little bit in case you're unfamiliar with what we do. We create opportunities to foster a deeper spiritual connection with God outdoors and through virtual nature walks online. And Lydia has put our website in there. We have all of the nature walks actually on our website under the video page, so people can do those at any time. And we are a community that openly prays for the healing of the land in our hearts, allowing for open conversation of our culture of consumption. We embrace holy wisdom, and we celebrate varied personal experiences. So Wild Church is really for everyone. Those, like I said, those who have a pretty strong Christian faith life, those who are in recovery from wounds inflicted by religious trauma. And some people will come, they say they have no faith affiliation, or they're simply seeking to go deeper. So I just kind of wanted to explain a couple of the things that we offer in case you want to get involved or you know somebody who might want to get involved. We've been doing once a month an in-person gathering, which have been, the feedback on that has been like, thank you for still gathering online. I'm, as Arlene says, she didn't say it about this, but a Zoombie. I love that term. Like, there's so many Zoom meetings, and there's just so much sitting in front of the screen. And so for people to safely distance and go for a hike outside and then do a prayer reflection as we're gathering together outside, they said, please keep it going as long as we can keep it going. So we do an in-person hike or gathering once a month. And I'm getting requests to do more. We do evening centering prayer, but I'm actually getting requests for that to be even outdoors if we can. So evening centering prayer is a time where we get together for 30 minutes and we center ourselves into taking a moment away from I mean, it's weird because you're still on the computer, but taking a moment to disconnect from the news, disconnect from Instagram, and disconnect from all that busyness, to take 20 minutes of guided silence in community with others. So we make the space for that to happen. And I try to do different things each month that are sort of hitting people that might not go to church. Again, that's my demographic that I'm trying to minister to. So for example, this Friday we're doing Hallows Eve, a holy holiday, ? Saints lighting the way. So I'm inviting people into the conversation of sharing a saint that we might not know about, or we get to hear about St. Francis in a whole new way. Someone's going to share on him. So you get to come into that community, you get to share those experiences. And the hope is that, like all we're doing in our own ministries and as a part of the church, that God will speak and touch somebody that otherwise might have never known the love that is offered. And so I'm humbled by the work I get to do to create all of these things. And I would love anybody's input. Anybody wants to get involved, we are here to build the community together. So thank you for letting me share a little bit today.
Thank you, Lanny. The Episcopal Church offers grants to support local efforts, and we're going to hear from Trinity Gladstone on a grant they received.
Welcome to Trinity Episcopal Church in Gladstone, and today we are going to see a work of progress thanks to the work of many and to the Episcopal Evangelism Grant Program. It has truly resulted in an evolution of an idea. An idea was brought to the vestry in a congregation to what we could do, and that is, like I said, where the evolution began. The idea of a labyrinth garden went over well, but then we had suggestions to add a peace pole. We also had suggestions to do a free library, and the idea grew. The original idea was to put pavers just spread out on a lawn to create a labyrinth. But then we were going to invite the community and the surrounding area to come and also enjoy it. It wasn't just for our congregation. We also decided we needed a fence in the back. To cut off, if we're going to have a serene garden, we needed to have a fence. Okay.
And thanks to Dale Jameson for that message from Trinity Gladstone. And now another Trinity, Trinity Houghton and their food pantry. We'll hear about how that's been going for them.
Hi there, I'm Shane Spellmeyer. I am the priest in partnership here at Trinity Episcopal Church in Houghton, and this is our food and other things pantry. Now, even though I'm the person sitting here, it would be remiss for me to let you assume that it was my idea or that I am the primary caretaker of this ministry, because I'm not. So let me tell you the story of how this ministry got started. About a year ago when I got here, I noticed that these Trinitarians have a strong desire to show hospitality, but to also serve their community, to make themselves known in this community as the hands and feet of Christ, as the hands and feet of love. I think our tagline here at Trinity says we've been serving the Copper Country as a community of faith, hope, and love since 1862, something like that. So we want to continue in that act of service, that act of love. So I said, Trinitarians, would it be possible for us on the first Sunday of every month to collect canned goods, to collect non-perishable items, things that you might find at a food pantry, to bless these items during our Sunday liturgy on that first Sunday of the month, to bless them during the offertory, and then to send those items, those blessed goods, back out into the world, back to other food pantries, St. Vincent de Paul's, to Canterbury House, to some of the other food pantries that are here in the area. And folks were really interested in this idea of serving, of feeding our community from what we do, from our own prayer life, from our own liturgy, to feed them from that. Folks were so interested in this idea of feeding and serving, in fact, that a couple months later at one of our vestry meetings, one of our longtime parishioners, one of our longtime members here, Lois Seiler, piped in and she said, would it be possible for us to have our own food pantry, our own Trinity food pantry? And so now we do. And the rest, they say, is history. So that was about the turn of the year. So I want to say that was around January or February when we began our Trinity food pantry. And since then, it's grown. So one of the primary focuses that we wanted for this specific food pantry, like I said, there are a number of food pantries in the area, and we are blessed to be among their number. But for this food pantry, we wanted to provide some of the things that you might not find elsewhere at other food pantries. So in addition to having your normal staples of canned goods and non-perishables, which are over here that you might not be able to see, we also have broth and juices and cleaning products, seasonings for more elaborate meals. We have hygiene products. We have for newborns, we have babies and diaper rash cream. We have mouthwash and toothbrushes. We have hygiene products. We have stuff that we thought people needed. And then as folks came in, as folks responded to this ministry and said, hey, you have a food pantry, could we come? We've started asking folks to sign in, again, because of COVID, but before even that happened, we just wanted to know who we were serving in this community. So we opened our food pantry. It's now open on the first and the third Thursday of every month, from 10:30 to noon. It's first come, first serve, and then after every Thursday, we restock this food pantry to make sure that for the next week, or for the next open week, folks are able to have what they need. As this ministry has continued to grow, we've also been able to partnership with Portage Lake United Church, which is just down the road from where we are here in Houghton. It's actually right across the street from the Canterbury House. Now, we were able to partnership with that church, who also had a food pantry, which has been adjusted due to COVID. We were able to partner with them and get vouchers for a local grocery store for fresh produce. So if folks here, because we obviously don't have fresh fruits and vegetables sitting around, we have canned goods, but we don't have the fresh thing. If folks come here seeking fresh stuff, courtesy of Portage Lake United, we are now able to provide vouchers to a local grocery store that's worth about $20 for them to get fruits, vegetables, what they might need. So again, another blessing that really just kind of fell into our lap that we were able to provide for our neighbors. So that's just another thing. So as this food pantry has gone on, as I said, we began this about the turn of the year. And then as we all know, in March, everything changed, everything. And so we had to reevaluate how we wanted to do ministry here at Trinity. Like everyone else in the diocese, we had a hiatus from Sunday worship. And for a few weeks, we might have even had a hiatus of our food pantry just because we didn't know what to do. But as time went on, we realized that folks were losing jobs, were losing their financial security, were losing food security, which is a big deal. So we didn't know how we were going to keep this food pantry open, but we determined that we had to keep this food pantry open as much as we could for the folks that needed it. Now, if you've ever been to Trinity's parking lot, you'll know that we're not super conducive to having a drive-through. So we've had to modify the space leading into here to make sure that we could do folks one at a time. As folks come in, they're asked to wear a mask. The only reason I'm not wearing a mask now is because we recently had a food pantry, and it's going to be quite a few weeks until our next one, just because of how October worked out this year. And we ask that folks only come in one at a time to try and be safe, to make sure that this is a ministry where we can serve our residents, to make sure that they have what they need, and to make sure that they are safe in doing so and keeping others safe. As I was preparing for this video, I initially asked our food pantry minister, Lois Seiler, if she wanted to say a few words. But she said she's a little bit shy, so she asked me to do it. But she did ask that I give a few sort of statistics about how we've been doing. So since we've opened, we've had over 114 individuals come through the food pantry to be served, to find what they need. We also have a lot of repeat customers who come through, which is wonderful, and we are glad to serve these people over and over again. We've also served, in those 114 individuals, we've served 52 individual families, so people with kids who have been able to put a little bit of food on their table thanks to this ministry, and I am so, so grateful for that. I think that's it.
And now we're going to hear from Lydia, who needs to unmute herself.
Okay, got it. Sorry about that. Oh, that was funny. Okay, wow, what a full morning of a lot of reporting in and hearing what's going on, all the great things going on around the diocese. You know, I was on a phone call recently with Lisa Kimball from Virginia Theological Seminary and Juan Oliver, who is the custodian for the Book of Common Prayer for the Episcopal Church. And we were talking about baptism and about how it feels right now that what's under attack with COVID and with racial tension and with political division is really the sense of community and connection, that like community and connection is being attacked. And so we talked about how the thing that connects us, that ties us together, is our baptism. It's the vows we take together and the ways that we support one another and hold one another accountable. And so coming up for All Saints Day is one of our major baptismal feasts in the church. And it's a time when traditionally we would renew our baptismal vows together or offer baptism to new folks. And so maybe some of you are planning to do that as you gather this weekend, or next weekend is that week. But we wanted to take a moment to renew our baptismal vows together. And so it's a bit awkward to do call and response through Zoom. And so Brad, who's staying upstairs in the diocesan apartment, we called down and said, come downstairs, we got to make a little video. And so Brad and Jane and Rayford and I all renewed our baptismal vows together and made a little video that we would like to invite you into participating in your own space from home. And so I will share that now.
Do you reaffirm your renunciation of evil and renew your commitment to Jesus Christ?
I do.
Do you believe in God the Father?
I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth.
Do you believe in Jesus Christ, the Son of God?
I believe in Jesus Christ, God's only Son, our Lord. He was conceived by the power of the Holy Spirit and born of the Virgin Mary. He suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, died, and was buried. He descended to the dead. On the third day he rose again. He ascended into heaven and is seated at the right hand of the Father. He will come again to judge the living and the dead.
Do you believe in God the Holy Spirit?
I believe in the Holy Spirit, the Holy Catholic Church, the communion of saints, the forgiveness of sins, the resurrection of the body, and the life everlasting.
Will you continue in the apostles' teaching and fellowship, in the breaking of bread and in the prayers?
I will with God's help.
Will you persevere in resisting evil, and whenever you fall into sin, repent and return to the Lord?
I will with God's help.
Will you proclaim by word and example the good news of God in Christ?
I will with God's help.
Will you seek and serve Christ in all persons, loving your neighbor as yourself?
I will with God's help.
Will you strive for justice and peace among all people and respect the dignity of every human being?
I will with God's help.
May Almighty God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who has given us a new birth by water and the Holy Spirit, and bestowed upon us for the forgiveness of sins, keep us in eternal life by his grace, in Christ Jesus our Lord.
Amen.
My friends, we have come to the end of our first morning, our first session today. And I thank you for your attention and for your flexibility for being here. And want to invite you back at 1 p.m. Eastern time. Jake Owensby, you can Google him real quick, go to Amazon, you'll see his books. He is a wonderful writer and person, and you don't have to have read his book to enjoy this afternoon session from 1 p.m. Eastern till 2:30, unless we, for some reason, wrap up a tad earlier. And so we'll see you back here, and you can just log back. You can do a couple things. You could leave your camera off and your microphone off and walk away for an hour, or you can reuse the same login to come back at 1. See you later.